And I would now request Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee, Professor of the Department of Economics of the University of Calcutta, to deliver the inaugural address, and her lecture will be on the future of Metropolis, the Kolkata case. Professor Chatterjee.
Thank you, Shobhujachi. And again, once again, a thanks to CRG, all the members of CRG, for requesting me to deliver this lecture. I don't know whether I can do justice to the particular topic, but I would like to pose it in this way. How much time I will have?
40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Okay. So let me pose it this way. I have selected the topic as the future of Metropolis. Future of Metropolis, the case study of Kolkata. Now this may apply to all metropolitan cities of the world. Kolkata may be stand as an example for the whole scenario. Now if you look at the history of Metropolis or a metropolitan city, as the name suggests, that is, it is the mother city. It is the mother city, and the metropolitan area basically means that which have other smaller urban centers surrounding the mother city, which are interconnected in some way or other. I'm coming to the fact that why it is interconnected. Now, it is something which is born of the first age of modern urbanization, that is the Industrial Revolution. At the time of Industrial Revolution, when breaking the trajectory of urbanization that happened before, it's not that there were urban areas or urban centers in the world before Industrial Revolution, but what the Industrial Revolution changed was the production pattern. Production pattern, first time after this through the Industrial Revolution, what we saw that the cities became centers of production and basically large-scale industrial production. So, as we know, that industrial production has very good linkage effects, both forward and backward. That is, the backward means from where the raw materials are coming, and forward where the things are going. And secondly, that is, in the unit of industrial production, there are also some production of some ancillary and other types of products which are not made in the main factory, but they come from elsewhere, come from other smaller factories. That is, just for an example, that if you just take the garment industry, we'll see that wherever the garment is cut and sewed, the textile is cut and the garment is sewn and something, but the other accessories like buttons or others are being manufactured somewhere, and the garment manufacturer, they buy these buttons from them. So for any type of large-scale production, you will find this type of ancillary industries and others, and that is the reason why with Industrial Revolution we see that these ancillary industries are being grown, and they also, and these places where these small factories were being established, they also become urban. So in the history of industry-based urbanization, Manchester was the first metropolitan city with at least 10 or 11 smaller towns surrounding Manchester, which supplied smaller parts, machineries, etc. to the textile mills of Manchester. Now, when urbanization started in this part of the country, that is in Kolkata. Kolkata basically, as you know, the Kolkata started as the standpoint of East India Company. The East India Company, when they came to this part, and I'm not going to repeat that long history, that how the British gained dominance over the other European powers. This particular area, which we know as Kolkata metropolitan area these days, this is a place where you can see lots of European powers coming, doing their trading and etc. And many of the towns in this Kolkata metropolitan area had origin to that trade. that origin to that trade, you'll be surprised to know that the place Bandel or Hooghly, that was the first standpoint of the Portuguese, where Srirampur was the point where the Danes made their things. So there are lots of, and the French, as you know, French were in the area of Chandanagar, which is still called in Bengali Forashdanga. That is the place where so this is the place where lots of European powers, they have their footprints as urban centers, urban centers and others. So when it started as a point where there was a long debate, one can see that where would the British locate their headquarters of East India Company in this part. The East India Company in London was in favor of Uluberia, a place just across the river. But Job Charnock pleaded with them that let be on the other side of the river, so that because being in Uluberia, that will be more close to other powers, especially the Mughals can come and anytime they can do it. So finally, it was think that the Kolkata would be their headquarters. And so after 1757, when the British owned the so-called quote-unquote Battle of Plassey and became the ruler here, Kolkata eventually became the capital of British India, a position which it enjoyed till 1911, when it was shifted to Delhi. But by this time, within this year, from 1757 to 1911, Kolkata was immensely important, not only as the administrative headquarters of firstly the East India Company, then the British name itself after 1857, but also a place where there were trade, there was industry, and etc. There is the history behind this, that with industrial revolution, with international trade gaining volume all over the world, and they were in search of a good packaging material, and jute was found to be that material. So lots of jute mills were established along the river Hooghly, in the both banks of the river Hooghly, and this is also surprising, because jute is something which was grown in eastern part of Bengal, which is now Bangladesh. But why did the British bother to bring jute from the eastern part of the country, eastern part of Bengal, and establish the jute mills here? The first jute mill was established in Risra, sometime upstream in the left bank of Hooghly, and then all the smaller settlements being dotted with numerous jute mills. The Kolkata port is at the same time the cause and effect of the growth of these jute mills and others. The machineries, chemicals, etc. needed for these jute mills, etc. all came through Calcutta port, and the jute was being exported through Kolkata port. So the British were need to develop the transportation system. The transportation system, at first they were with the waterways. So at first the rivers were being interconnected with a number of canals, so that jute can be brought from eastern Bengal to these jute mills. And then came railways, and finally when one could build the bigger automobiles, it was the trunk roads. Trunk roads were of course there, but they are being used for transportation of products, and that came much later. So you will see this particular place, the Kolkata metropolitan area, which we called, that name came much later. But this place, which was developed as Calcutta Industrial Region, sometimes it is called, there are 5 chains of devils. Now what are these 5 chains? That is the 2 railway lines along the bank of Hooghly, the 2 trunk roads, the Barakpur trunk road in the east and the part of the Grand Trunk road in the west, and then the 2 and the river Hooghly itself. This 5 modes of transport that led to the growth of this particular industrial region. So when we talk about Kolkata, we cannot forget that we cannot study Kolkata alone. Kolkata has to be studied with this background. with this background and how Kolkata became the mother city. That is, if you go through the theoretical understandings of urban hierarchy and others, it is difficult to place them in case of Kolkata. In case of, if you go to these traditional theories of Christaller, Locke's, etc., it's difficult to put them in case of Kolkata. Here, each and every jute town, basically it was jute. It was jute, then followed by other things. Basically, it came the chemical industry, engineering industry, the metal industry. Howrah, just outside, on the other side of the river, that excelled in metal industry. The foundry industry in Howrah was very famous. That was added by the finding of iron ore and coal. Coal in Raniganj to Chotanagpur, that area. So this was basically an industrial area aided by these transportation routes and other things. The Kolkata port joined the whole area with the so-called outer world and others. And that Kolkata became the nerve center of everything that was happening in India and elsewhere. If you look at the logbook of the so-called Navy and other things, and that is the SS and others, you will find that ships from Kolkata went to every part of the world. Every part of the world, and Kolkata was almost the nerve center of everything. So, and at the same time, this type of industrial development that brought in migrants from every part of the world. I am not talking about only from India, from different parts of India, but also different parts of the world. Just yesterday, I was reading a story about the contribution of Armenians in Kolkata. They were probably the first to come to Kolkata. We have the Armenian Church, Armenian College. They were the first one who established church and college in Kolkata itself. So there are lots of people coming from different parts of the world. The Chinese were there. The first sugar mill in Kolkata was being established by a Chinaman, Achu. The place is now named after him, and this is Achipur. So this is the way the Kolkata has grown. Migrants have come here, but also to say that as migration is linked with some sort of agency type of thing. That is, when some people come from some part, he brings in others and others. One can see that in Kolkata itself, the migrants taking up particular professions and settling in. That is also a very common thing in case of migrant-based settlements in any part of the world, that is settling with a particular profession and the particular place. So in Kolkata itself, and also in parts of this greater Calcutta, you will find places named after the migrants. Named after the migrants in Kolkata, we will find Telenga Bagan, that is where people from this Telangana came. There is Uriapara and so and so. I'm not going to another. So there are lots of places where you will find that place names on the name of the migrants, sometimes on their professions. So this is one of the place where migrants live with each other, and they establish their own cultural and other types of things. I was surprised when I was doing my PhD and I was going for survey in the municipalities in and around Kolkata. I found that in a place called Shamnagar, about say 20-25 kilometers from Kolkata itself, there is a school. There is not less than, at that time, in the late 80s, I don't know what has happened now, 30 primary schools for people from Andhra Pradesh. Telugu being their vernacular. So there are instances of this type of cultural and other type of assimilation in this part of Kolkata. Now, at that time, that was called Calcutta Industrial Region. Calcutta Industrial Region, and that was being boundaried sometimes during the Second World War. As you all know that when the capital was transferred from Kolkata to Delhi, of course, some sort of political prominence definitely was lost because it's no more the capital. But Kolkata retained other types of territories like the business capital of Eastern India and others. And during the Second World War, it was the headquarters of the British Army and other forces for the Eastern Hemisphere. So Calcutta enjoyed that till. But Second World War also reminds us of the Bengal famine that happened, a man-made famine, which did happen because all the rice and others are being kept for feeding the army and others, and so lots of people died in that Bengal famine. But at that time, rationing was being introduced, and this Calcutta Industrial Region was being demarcated only for rationing purposes. But after independence, what happened? That this Calcutta metropolitan area was being formally delineated by a group of geographers, and that was being when in 1958 the Ford Foundation was asked to help Kolkata to have its have a planning exercise because of the partition and others, there was influx of people, which was not thought before, influx of people. So the infrastructure of the city and its surroundings just broke down. The people from Eastern Bengal, displaced people from Eastern Bengal, came and they settled anywhere they could find it convenient. So the suburbs of Calcutta were filled up by them, and every place in this Calcutta industrial region, they have to accommodate these displaced persons from East Bengal. So there was pressure on the existing infrastructure, like water supply, etc., and everything. So at that time, Ford Foundation was being asked to form a plan of Kolkata. Now that is something which is very unique to Kolkata, because at the same time there were being plans made for other metropolitan cities also. The Delhi plan, the Mumbai plan, everything that was being done at the same time. But where these plans, for Delhi, Mumbai, etc., they were basically very rigid master plan type of thing. In fact, they are called master plans. Kolkata went for something called basic development plan, and that was for the Kolkata metropolitan area itself. The Calcutta metropolitan area, that was being delineated with, in the north, it was 50 kilometers in the north, that is the newly formed township of Kollani was in the right bank, and Bashberia, a very old town, on the right bank, and in the south, it spread up to crossing Kolkata to the Bojboj-Uluberia connection. So that was how the concept of Calcutta metropolitan area came into being. At that time it was called Calcutta, so it was CMA. Now it's called Kolkata metropolitan area, so KMA. So it was the first time that it was thought that if Kolkata has to be saved, this surrounding area also has to be saved. So the provision of infrastructure and other things, because the population pressure from the refugee influx and others were almost, maybe it is better for Kolkata. It is more for Kolkata because Kolkata was the place where people came that they could find a job there. But it was also for the other towns and cities. So this, when this basic development plan, it was published sometimes in 65, and it was meant for 20 years, 66 to 86. 66 to 86, and there was, it took into account, it was not merely a town plan, it was basically to take into account the economy, the infrastructure, and also the people. Also the people in the sense that they are all also components of education and etc., education and medical facilities, etc., in this year. So So that was the period in the post-independence where this Kolkata metropolitan area became the focus of all attention. Now they thought of for a bipolar sort of development that Kolani Bashberi in the north and Kolkata Howrah in the should be the focal point of the right, but all other towns were in between, would have their share of infrastructure and share of other amenities, including primary schools and others. So that was the very uniqueness of basic development plan. That is how basic development plan tried to do justice to the post-partition trauma and other things. But unfortunately, in the 70s, there was a political unrest in this part of in West Bengal and others, so that when the basic development plan has to be implemented, there was no elected government in this state. So a development authority called Calcutta Metropolitan Development Authority was being formed under a presidential ordinance, and that took over the development of or the execution of the basic development plan, the projects of this basic development plan. So when in 96 we are evaluating that what has happened to basic development plan, whether it has been able to deliver what it promised, we saw that many things cannot be done because of that political unrest and other things. But what they have done, or what part of this Kolkata Metro, this basic development plan was being implemented, that is still what is guiding the planning process and others in this part of this Kolkata metropolitan area. Apart from this basic development plan, which was the main thing, there were other also sectoral plans like the Kolkata metropolitan water supply plan, then the sewerage and drainage plan, and finally the transportation plan. That is what has been in the transportation plan. You will see that what we see as the metro rail, the seed was there. It called for a north-south corridor and an east-west corridor linking, at that time Salt Lake was just being found, but this transportation master plan that talked about a train line from Salt Lake or East Calcutta to Howrah, etc. So that is how the metropolitan type of growth in this area was being saved. And the basic development plan and what has been done by KMDA can be called, that is a savior of the metropolitan structure of the area. But what happened after that, that if I divide it, that from the colonial to the post-independence period, where we had sort of mixed economy type of thing, that is, there was the planning commission, and then lots of same-day plan has been executed by loans from World Bank and ADB, etc. But when after that, we saw that is the liberalization period. Now, any area wherever in the world that basically thrives on two or three things. One is the ecological foundation, ecological and the geographical and physical foundation, that you cannot go beyond that. You can, with improvement on technology, you can try, but you cannot do everything. Then the economy and infrastructure, in a way, this ecology, economy and infrastructure are linked. That is, if we start with economy, if there is not economic buoyancy, you cannot build infrastructures, and if you cannot build infrastructures and maintain them, then your ecology is also at stake. And let me add to that the human resources and the quality of the human resource. It's not only human resource, but the quality of human resource. Now, till the advent of the so-called globalization, privatization, etc., the economy was going in one way. The hinterland behind the Kolkata port was basically an agricultural area. West Bengal is a paddy growing region. paddy was the main crop, and then diversification started, and sometimes it was thought that the paddy would be replaced by potato because potato became a very good commercial crop. But jute, which was the prime focal point of this area, that lost its is so-called economic and other types of importance. That is basically because of 2 or 3 reasons. The main is that, as I have already said, that the main jute growing areas were in Eastern Bengal. Eastern Bengal jute was brought there to these factories here. So with partition, we lost all our jute growing areas. When you will see the reports of the first, second, and even third Finance Commission. There was a separate chapter that is in West Bengal, some separate grant used to be given just for jute cultivation. So, of course, the people were, some farmers were being motivated to grow jute or others, but when that actually happened, so the jute mills has to be closed down because they did not have any raw material. But after that, when jute was available, the jute packaging, that lost its importance. It was now being replaced by plastic and other synthetic type of packaging. Now there is again a revival, but I am not going into that part. But the thing is that this jute economy, when it cannot carry on in the way it was before 1950s or others, that affected the economy of the whole region, because lots of ancillary and other industries were dependent on the jute industries. The Calcutta port also lost its importance because our main trading partners after the independence were in the western side, so where Mumbai and other western ports gained over Kolkata. Kolkata is a riverine port. There was a change in the technology of the marine vessels and others. That big marine vessels could not enter the river. So an alternative was thought in a subsidiary port in Haldia and others. All of them happened during the 70s. But the thing is that before the so-called look east and act east type of thing, nobody thought of reviving trading partners in the Eastern world, which was there during the British rule. Which was definitely there during the British rule, but nobody thought of reviving that thought of trade before the 90s. So that is another point, that Kolkata port lost its prime position as a port. At the time of independence also, Kolkata was the major port of the country in terms of import, export, etc. And also the regime we had, the economic regime we had, it was basically an import substituting type of thing, import substitution type of thing. And even import substitution, for a long period, consumption goods were barred from importing. Barred from import, only the major type of import was import under open general license, and that is about machineries and other things. As not only West Bengal but also other parts of Eastern India was suffering from lack of industries or other, there was hardly any market for, or any import market for this imported things and others. And about export, we lost jute, but we could not replace it with any other thing. So that was definitely a bad time, etc., for Kolkata and its region and etc. But what happened to the other 3 things? The economy was in shambles, and at the time also, we also overlooked the so-called ecological aspect of this region. With the Farakka barrage being there, and the treaty with Bangladesh, etc., we have to release water for the Padma river. So the navigability of Ganga or the Hooghly, as we call this channel, was also in question. But also ecological things, that where we are sitting, this Salt Lake would not happen if the ecological lobby was strong in late 50s or 60s. Because nowadays nobody will think of just dumping soil from the river to a place, to a vibrant wetland to have a residential locality. Residential locality, so Salt Lake would not have happened. And Salt Lake is a big thing, everybody knows about it. But there are lots of other smaller water bodies, etc., which are lifeline of this area, because they not only, they are very essential for paddy cultivation, and they also supplied a staple for Bengali food, that is a fish. And we forgot the ecological importance of all these things. The East Calcutta wetland, well, something is remaining there, the fishermen are working. In my today's class, I also taught my students that the wastewater from Kolkata that still feeds the fish in the East Calcutta wetland, but that was not so vibrant as it was before. Because as you see, that it's difficult to carry on if you don't have any sort of protection on your part. One of our students, she did a time use survey with these fish cultivators of East Calcutta wetland, and they found that if they spend their whole time in fish cultivation, that is all the working hours, they are not getting that return. So they have to switch their livelihood to something else. Now, coming to that, once upon a time, the Kolkata was a place where trade, etc., everything was happening, and there was the formal organized sector in the industry, in the service sector, etc. But after this 90s, what we have seen that there is as far as employment and everything is concerned, we are more and more passing to the own account workers, informal sector workers and others. In fact, informal sector workers are sometimes hidden with their tie-up with formal sectors. Most of the security guards and etc. we see, they act as appendages of the formal sector. They are not employees of that particular concern, rather that is outsourced to some other company which is supplying these people. So the social security network available with the formal sector employment is gradually vanishing. Then what is happening, that is we have, it's not for Kolkata but for any other big city in the world, it's no more an industrial economy, it is turning towards a service economy. So the linkage effect or the agglomeration effect which the industrial economy used to have is losing. Service sector doesn't have that type of agglomeration effect which factories and industries used to have. Service sector is sometimes content in its own. You don't spread much linkage effect over there. So now it's a service sector based economy, and in that the informal sector is growing by leaps and bounds. So the role Kolkata used to play as the mother city that is binding all other 38 smaller towns and others in its string, and the major part of the string was being the service that Kolkata used to give to this factories and others, this industry-based thing, that is gradually losing. The service sector is more or less footloose. You have the sector 5 here where we have the main part of the service sector that is basically footloose, that does not have much of the linkage effect which we had when we had the industrial economy. So that what is happening that the nature of migration is also changing. The people who are coming to work in this service sector, maybe the very hi-fi type of job in the so-called service industry, or the very lowly jobs just doing this, they are not the people who used to migrate. Yes, When the jute industry were there, we had lots of people coming from the upcountry, basically Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, for working in the jute mills, because the Bengalis always abhorred physical way. So they were the babus. If you go to any old jute mill locality, you will find there are 3 sets of residential things. Firstly, the best bungalows in the riverside were for the managers and others, followed by the babu quarters, where basically the Bengali clerical people used to live, and then the coolie lines. And then the coolie lines. So that nature of migration is also changing in this part. People are coming to work in the Sector 5 and other hi-fi things, but they are basically they are contractual worker. A person who may work here may go to somewhere else for the next 6 months. So the demand for you will find that the demand for space, demand for residential spaces, that is also changing in this area. We'll see that that maybe the new residential things are coming out. Something we haven't seen before. Even in the 70s or 80s, there was single detached bungalow type of 2-story, 3-story building for the general people. But after that, the so-called apartment culture took off, and from apartment we are now in the gated communities. We are now in the gated communities, so you see that in most of the gated communities, the actual owner, maybe he may be an NRI, or he may be living in other part of the Kolkata. He comes to Kolkata, say, for once or twice in the year. For the other part, his flat is rented to that type of paying guest. Either it's a paying guest type of thing, or that may be a 3 months sort of 3 months agreement or something like that. That the rent control thing, which was being made at one time to save the rentiers from the whims of the owners, that stopped they just stopped the rental market for housing for a long year. But now this rental market for housing is coming back for the upper end of the so-called housing market. The lower end, as you see, that in Kolkata, the Kolkata is one of the most inclusive cities in the sense that we have big slums in parts of the city, but we generally do not have very glaring type of things like Dharavi or the Jamuna Park colonies like Delhi. Here the slums are also just mingled between the other localities and others. Now, these are the places where poor people used to live. One may ask that why? What is the origin of the slums? Now, in Kolkata, basically the origin of the slums was not by the people who came, not by them. It was something which was meant by the so-called landlords. Landlords, which they had vast amount of land, they gave it to somebody other to raise thatched roofs and others, and they rented it to the people who came to Kolkata for work. That is the origin for Kolkata slums from, say, mid-18th century or something. Of course, there were some people in Kolkata Corporation at that time who, in late 19th century, took some measures so that the slums become habitable. Of course, with urbanization and others, but still you will see that at least 1/3 of Kolkata's total population still live in slums. And that is also true for other towns in the Kolkata metropolitan area. Once upon a time, it was believed that the slums are only in the big cities, but now census data shows that slums are available in any type of cities. But in the post-independence period, the new slums generally grow either on vacant public land or very rarely in private land. So it is basically the growth of new slums in the whole area. It is basically a failure of the land market to provide suitable land for the poorer people. Poorer people is the failure of the land market and any other. Because now slums are not built by the so-called landowners. It is where the poor people has to live because they want to earn their living and they have to minimize their cost for transportation and other things. So that is one thing. But the point I am trying to make, that with these changes, with these type of changes, it is a thought for all the metropolitan cities in the world that the concept of mother city is no more. Here, with footloose service industry taking up, there is hardly any linkage available, any sort of linkage effect. Of course, with the development of the information technology and information technology enabled services, that requires huge investment in infrastructure. But once you invest it, you are on your own. The pandemic has showed us that is the work from home thing. You can sit in the home and you do your work. You do your work. You may not have connection with either of your colleagues or anybody else. So the service industry becoming not only footloose, but it can be place where people can work from on any situation if he has a stable internet connection and some sort of device, maybe a laptop, even maybe an handheld device, and he can carry on his work. So that is the type of economy we are generally progressing to. That is, and a major part of the informal sector worker is increasing informal sector workers and own account workers with maybe with unpaid family labor. Nobody would think of, just yesterday I saw that is a very small stall, and that is, as you know, this SIR thing is going on. SIR, somebody sitting with a laptop and a printer, and he is helping, and the electricity line is hooked from somewhere, because it is difficult to have electricity for such a stall, and he is helping people with the laptop and a printer, and he is giving out printouts of the people for their name in the voter list in 2002. So it's absolutely a so-called footloose type of thing. Even not footloose, it is somebody just, he can afford a laptop and a printer and an electric connection and a Wi-Fi, he can do this service. So given this type of situation, if you go elsewhere in the world, you will also find that is the mother city type of thing, the metropolitan type of thing, which was the binding factor for a string of towns and villages. Again, if we go for statistical regularity in that, in terms of rank size rule, etc., no metropolitan area in the world would fit in. It may retain its position, but its connection to the subsidiary cities and towns is actually losing because of the nature of the economy has changed and others. Now, here one point has to be said, that generally speaking, cities are very, what should I say, the sex ratio or the gender ratio is always against women. It is changing. If you look at Kolkata itself, in 1951 census, it was 646 women per 1,000 men. Now it is about, in 2011 census, it is about 922 or 23 for Kolkata. It has surely improved, but that improvement has not been reflected in the work participation rate of the female. In India itself, the work participation rate is very poor, and of course that is being reflected. That is so. When I come to the question of gender and gender security, etc., it is the case where we are, maybe why women are so less outside, that creates insecurity for the women. If there are more and more women in the public transport and others, then maybe the women were more secure because they would have developed their own security system. In most of the time, when I go back in the last metro, I find maybe there are 1 or 2 girls in the compartment, on the compartment. And that may be one of the reasons that if more women do not come out for work, or for anything else, this question of aloneness and insecurity will be there. But the things that, as Kolkata is culturally, we at least think that culturally it's a very developed city and others, I think that the new thoughts about the gender continuum that started with the Pride Walk in the late 90s and continuing it very much gel in the country, that is a ray of hope. That is, Kolkata can still show the way. Maybe it may not remain as a metropolis. It's just a provincial capital now, nothing more than that. Its economy is almost shattered and etc. It's not a production economy anymore. It's remnants of the service economy and so on. So given that there are of hope, if you think of the gender continuum and others, there are again consciousness about the ecological failures, etc. Even very feeble voices, that is also being heard in different contexts and etc. So the metropolis may not exist. The metropolis may not exist because the economic and other forces which form the metropolis in the 18th and 19th century, even the 20th century, they continued. They may not be there because of the changing economic structure, changing sort of infrastructural changes, etc. But with IT and ITS and other infrastructures, the Kolkata and other police, they would retain some sort of supremacy over the other smaller things. So let me stop here and thank you once again.
Thank you, Professor Chatterjee, for taking us through very quickly in a very short span of time through the colonial and post-colonial history of Kolkata and how this metropolitan city was gradually coming up during the colonial period with industrialization in the interests of the colonial rulers, and subsequently how the shift of the capital of the country from Calcutta to Delhi that started changing the fortunes of the city, and how subsequently the partition of the subcontinent and the kind of partition of the economy as well that started the journey of deindustrialization. And she has quite rightly argued that how a city which was made by the migrants, particularly the migrant labor, how that industrial city of the colonial period that has started turning into a service economy city. And in this context, she has also taken us through the pluriverse of this metropolitan city and the forward and backward linkages of any metropolitan city. And he has also, shown us the interrelationship between ecology, economy, and infrastructure. So this is a very important inaugural lecture. And for the inaugural lecture, we usually do not have any Q&A. And therefore, we shall conclude this session. And before we formally conclude this session, I would request Dr. Shatabdi Das, the Assistant Director of the Calcutta Research Group, to propose a formal vote of thanks. Thank you.